Hello and welcome to the Dareful Project. I'm your host, Deborah Hotelling. Our guest today is Dr. Jennifer Wong. She's director of the Wallis Annenberg GenSpace. Now, GenSpace is a physical place. It's here in Los Angeles, and it offers lifelong learning to seniors in the community. But it's also a big idea. It's finding ways for people of different ages to form true friendships, something I'm really interested in. And it's helping change the outdated ways that we as a nation and as a world are talking and telling stories about aging and what we talk about. Jen, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and always happy to share about our work at GenSpace.
So give us the overview. Tell us about GenSpace, how it came to be, and how you became part of it.
Sure. So I love starting off with this because I hope it helps ground folks on where we are. And I know we have all dealt with various levels of social isolation through COVID, through quarantine, through change in remote work or whichever. So I love telling this story because in and beyond all of that, years ago, Wallis was starting to notice more and more older adults who were isolated or solo in the community. And she thought, surely some of these people, yes, may totally choose to go grocery shopping or be in the park or be at the movie theaters by themselves. And we love that. We love a solo moment. But it seemed to her that that there were far more older adults out there in the world alone than there were younger generations. And she wondered why there weren't more spaces for older adults to gather together. So she and our wonderful Annenberg Foundation executive director, Cindy Kennard, went out to LA County senior centers, and they visited a lot, and many of which they were really impressed with, and they knew were doing good work in the community. But the thing that struck them was there weren't enough. Mm-hmm. And of the ones that there were, they often were in these leftover spaces. The center used to be a community center and now was changed into a senior center. And they were far away from transportation, many of them, public transportation, hard to get to, kind of in basements or other things. And so Wallis just had this idea that maybe instead of partnering with one of those or doing something else with existing resources, that really there was an opportunity to create a new resource. And so at the time, the idea of GenSpace was born. Wallis's vision was that the space would be in an easy to access place in the city. It would be in a diverse neighborhood that that historically has had fewer of these senior centers available to them, and that it would just be a warm and welcoming space. And so that's where GenSpace kind of started. That was the vision of GenSpace. And then after choosing the Koreatown location, GenSpace partnered with the Center on Longevity with Laura Carstensen up at Stanford, and our local gerontology department at USC, at the Leonard David School, and we were able to do focus groups in and around Koreatown, asking older adults from many diverse groups what they wanted and needed in a community space.
And have you been part of this from the beginning?
I have been a part, the beginning of the building and not that great work that happened before me. So luckily there was another academic wonder, Marty DeLima, who was leading that focus group work and a lot of the previous research. And I came in after the focus groups we used the focus groups to create our 6 program priority areas for the center. And then I was able, with the help of Wallis and Cindy, to build out the leadership initiative.
So I want to find out more about the 6 pillars, but I'm also just struck as you're describing this, that even the idea, this is how bad our narrative is about aging, the idea that you would have the thoughtfulness to go out and do focus groups instead of just assuming what old people want it's kind of blowing my mind right now. So what surprised you? What did you find?
So the thing that struck me so much was that it really, this generation grew up at a time where there was less extracurriculars and than we have seen in generations since. So we have a member that grew up attending her educational classes were in special ed, and she was never given the opportunity to engage in physical activity like PE, or she had a separate nutrition, so she didn't, or lunch breaks, so she didn't get to go out and play with other kiddos, and she didn't take any art classes or choir or any of these things. And so and I know that that's an extreme case in our membership, but I think in general, what we know about education and what makes well-rounded humans and well-rounded contributors to our society is when we get to be creative, and not only get to pursue our academic pursuits, but also look to be creative in many ways, whether it's computer science or art or singing or using our voices or communication or acting. And so that is what has surprised me most, is in many of our older adults come from generations where these weren't opportunities, and watching them dive headfirst in collage, in tech classes, learning about social media and emails, and how to make best use of their smartphones. They are just thriving in terms of wanting to get dirty, wanting to get their hands dirty and participate in the horticultural therapy space. And then I cannot say enough about the wonderful work that our program team has done to identify physical fitness classes that our members are eager to be a part of. We pretty much are fully at capacity at any given physical fitness class. And I think it just goes to show you what is lacking in our communities, which is age appropriate and age safe and mobility safe physical fitness classes.
But at the same time, assuming that olders still do want to be moving around and being fit and feel good about themselves. So not infantilizing that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to give an option for everything. Not everyone loves a Zumba class. Not everyone loves, we have so many options, and it's to do just that, is to really provide opportunities for everything. And I was even thinking about like our art classes, and people, often think about older adults knitting and crocheting, and that's okay. Like, we actually didn't have knitting and crocheting on our calendar and on our class offerings for a long time, but our members asked for it, and they said, hey, if you don't mind, we'd love to start a knitting club. And soon enough, we found an instructor, just in case there were people who were new to knitting and wanted to learn how to knit. But we also really let the community tell us what interests them. And sometimes the groups start as self-led, and we give space for that. And sometimes there's an opportunity to bring in a volunteer or an instructor that can help shape those classes. So really excited to continuously learn and hear from our community.
So how many folks do you have participating in GenSpace?
Sure. So we are a smaller community center. We're less than 7,000 square feet. We pretty much have four classrooms with kind of like a den or a multi-purpose room that has a very active pool table in it. But we have roughly just over 200 members. Mm-hmm. And we know from research past, and big shout out to our other senior center friends who continue to contribute their data and their membership and class participation to the state and to the feds, that we know that of all folks who attend a senior center, that most people attend a couple of hours a month. And we're really proud that pretty much our members attend about 3 to 4 classes a week on average, which means they're here at least 3 to 4 hours, and that doesn't account for the time that they spend chatting with a friend or reading a book in our library, or participating in the tech bar with their questions, or just kind of like free tech exploration.
And for our viewers and listeners, we're going to put the GenSpace, the site, on our notes so that you can look at it. But I'm warning everybody, once you look at the curriculum, you're going to want to sign up for everything. They're super,
Yeah.
super fun looking. But, we have an obligation, I think, to even expand it. And it sounds like this is part of your mandate beyond, your own walls. And I have a loved one in an assisted care community, and the activities are okay, but they're not, what you guys are offering. What could we do? What have you learned that we could learn that we can then bring to our loved ones who may be in assisted care, who don't have this kind of lifelong learning available to them yet?
Sure. So, one, I always want to give kudos to the people in positions similar to mine and teams like mine who I know are doing the best that they can, and I know are always thinking about ways that they can support their communities. So, one, I just think that folks are really doing what they can. I think now before ever, now we are in a place where we have a large amount of older adults that are entering into senior facilities, whether they're assisted living centers like yours or senior centers like mine. And I think that because of just the sheer number of people and the most diverse and educated older adult population our nation has ever seen, really gives opportunity to diversify. And so there's a couple of ways that we really think about that. One, we think that it's really important to hear from your community, however you can do it. So may it be meetings, may it be surveys, may it be focus groups like we had. We know that that's really important. The other thing that I just thought of as you were asking about your family member and dear friend was that we partnered and we continue to partner with organizations in our communities that do really rock star things. So at the beginning of opening and over the course of the first year, we partnered with the YMCA that has the largest older adult gym membership of all organizations out there. And we asked them, hey, what do your older adult members, what classes do they go to? How do they engage with your community? What are they up to? What are the best times of day that they work out? What's up for them? And we were able to partner with them and bring the YMCA's, most senior attended or older adult attended classes. And we brought those same instructors here at GenSpace, and here they are over a year and a half later, still working at GenSpace and having full capacity classes. The other thing that we did was we partnered with the public library in our neighborhood, which happens to be the Pio Pico Library. And we worked with the larger public library to figure out what are the books that older public library members are checking out from you all, are borrowing from you. And we went ahead and they donated a ton of books off of that list, both in English, large print, Korean, and Spanish. And then we have continued to keep that list alive and purchase books or have books donated off of that list. And so that's another way to keep the membership alive and keep it current. And then lastly, we know that resources are hard to come by. And so what we have liked to do is, we're very, blessed and honored to be a recipient of Wallis Annenberg's funding. And so we like to think that we are a pilot program to show other senior centers and spaces what we are up to and show how well attended and how well enjoyed our programming and our community center is. And we hope that that helps encourage folks. And on the other side, we also provide free on-demand programming on our website so that anyone, no matter where they are, as long as they have internet access, can access our on-demand programming. So it ranges from cultural conversations to information with our partners at AARP about financial security and safety, to a variety of fitness classes, because we know that that is likely one of the most engaging programs that we can show on our website.
That's amazing. As you were talking about that, and you're right, a lot of us grew up before Title IX. So if you were a woman, you weren't invited to be part of teams. You weren't, unless you were a cheerleader, you weren't, or maybe a member of the tennis team. Physical activity would be something that you would need to explore as an adult in many cases. So it's exciting to see that your guests are taking you up on that.
Oh, like by full force. Absolutely. I love it. I love seeing it, and I agree. And I think it's even more important. And I feel like, one class can be like a gateway to these other classes. So maybe our members see that we have belly dancing on the schedule, and it's these other 4 dance classes that are the gateway to belly dancing. And I really love it. So yeah.
Wait, belly
Great.
dancing?
Yes,
sounds
yeah,
awesome.
why not? I know I still have not taken a class. I probably should hop in there and learn what everyone else is doing. So I'm not so I don't take my first class at 70 or 80, but yeah, I hope to learn from them.
I love that. And speaking of learning from one another, and going back to something you said earlier, that a lot of senior spaces are sort of leftover spaces, which that in itself is a kind of narrative of what we think of seniors, when it's like a basement that no one is using anymore and we'll make it into a senior center, and you being deliberate. The other thing that you're doing there is making sure that olders who join you are not by themselves. You are working really hard to bring in intergenerational conversations and events to fuel friendships. Tell me more about that.
So this, it's in our name, Gen, Gen, as to be a generational and intergenerational, and to indicate all of this. We know that it was really important to have a space dedicated to and for older adults. However, we cannot have older adults thrive if they're in an age cohort, away from everybody else. Mm-hmm. One of the great ideas of having this space is to bring folks back into community. And then I think, and Wallis believes, that we need to break down aging stereotypes across the board. So we create a lot of opportunities for our members to interact with younger generations. We have preschoolers, elementary school kiddos, high schoolers, and then we have a bunch of collegiate scholars with us at all times. And our younger generational programming, I love that it's not just a mentorship model. I feel very strongly that older adults and young people and kiddos should engage in things that are new to both folks, so that truly there's not this weird mentorship dynamic where older adults are always helping younger people or advising. They have tons of wisdom, but that can't be the only way, that they interact with young people. And it can't be the only way that young people relate to older people, by assisting them with technology. Now, we understand that those are welcomed and available and easy ways to connect. I'm not saying that ensuring that our older adults and young people engaging in a new activity is easy, because sometimes it's not. But I think there is something really beautiful and wonderful about creating an art piece, about creating an herb garden, about having these conversations that we call living room chats, that are just conversations around topics that are in our current events or popular culture, and being able to hear from one another what we think and hear and feel about whatever's going on in our world or in our community. And so I really love that we have opportunities for intergenerational connection, and I hope that it instills better closeness among community members, and also breaks down those aging stereotypes and aging silos that we have created in our communities.
It seems to be sort of, the stereotype that we keep going back to. So I love the idea of everybody being new to something, being a beginner at something together, because then it's shared ideas, passion, and curiosity, rather than these kind of false sense of, you're a boomer and I'm a millennial, so we're on different teams somehow.
Yes. And I think that, again, there are very natural ways where one generation can support or mentor another generation. But I think most of all, that the humanness of it all is being a beginner, together to really explore, as you mentioned. So I'm glad that we have those opportunities, and it creates a lot of laughter and a lot of fun and a lot of conversation. And so we're always really sad to see our friends from younger generations, move on to the next thing and have to leave our community center, but we know that they'll be back next week or in a couple days.
But folks who wanted to do this, how do you start, and what have you learned, or what surprised you about bringing folks together intergenerational for friendships?
I think that the thing that I've learned the most and the best opportunity is finding instructors who are comfortable instructing both generations in a shared activity.
Oh.
So that to me is really the thing that surprised me the most. I will say, just and also across the board, are there instructors who are amazing, skilled professionals in any given trait? Are they willing and able to feel comfortable instructing older adults, even by themselves, not even with the younger generations? I think that we just are kind of in a league of our own sometimes. And so it's been really fun to either help people figure out that they absolutely can instruct older adults, and it's an enjoyable experience with different challenges and different opportunities, but also to think differently. Not only is our membership, mostly people in their 70s, late 60s, 70s, and 80s. I mean, our eldest member is 101, which is amazing. But, just thinking about, pretty much, teaching to the middle of the room would be a mid 70-year-old person. Not only is that a challenge, but also here in Koreatown, English is often a second or third or fourth language for many of our members. And so I think that is an additional challenge and opportunity for our instructors. And so we do have some instructors that are bilingual, which is amazing. We also have the opportunity for volunteers to be a bilingual support in a classroom. And so that's something that I didn't quite understand would be such a challenge. And I originally thought that I would need pretty much like 100% Korean speaking folks, but because this community is actually much more diverse than just Korean Americans and Korean immigrants, we actually, if I only had Korean speaking instructors, I would be leaving out nearly 70% of the classroom, in some classes, or 10%. It just depends. So these are all interesting and wonderful things that surprised me, and that I'm really happy to learn about and to address with my wonderful program team and support.
I hadn't thought about the instructor part of that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And I also think, going back to the intergenerational surprises, I think a lot of older people are nervous about connecting with younger generations because mostly we connect with intergenerationally within our families, and we do less so within our communities. But I will say that once people do it, they kind of don't let it go. So that's been really fun to watch too, is somehow bringing people, our older adult members, in to say it's okay to have preschoolers kind of hanging around and being around you. You're not going to break them. You're not going to offend them. You're not going to, but I just think that many of our intergenerational connections are done in the family home, in the living room, in the backyard, over Christmas, over Thanksgiving, and much less during the day. Although we do know that intergenerational housing and home life is increasing. I just think sometimes, that's not available to everyone.
Mm. I love the idea of having a preschool and a senior center in the same location.
Yes, it's a welcomed treat, and we are taking full advantage, as is the preschool, and we couldn't do it without our partners at the Browerman School. So we're really pleased.
But your vision extends even beyond the walls of GenSpace. And you said, I'm going to quote you here because I love it so much, that in order not to tokenize a particular path of older adulthood, we as a culture need to actively seek out a variety of stories about aging in media and through brands that value aging. I love that idea, that word tokenize, because that just really rang true for me. Talk more about what was behind that statement and what you're finding.
Sure. So because we are so rich in stories here at GenSpace, and because the Annenberg family has such history and experience in the communication world, we wanted to create a chance to use what we were learning here at GenSpace and partner it with really wonderful partners in entertainment and media. And so we have done some work around that, and we've called in change makers and writers and producers to help us kind of think about what older adult stories and older adult representation in media can look like. Our friends at the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative had done some research, has some research and findings from times past that we're looking forward to hopefully updating soon. And they found that basically, even though older adults account for over 20% now of the current population, and only to increase in the next couple of years and years in the future, that their representation is almost the half of the percentage of what they represent here in our community. And so, and of that representation, it seems to be that their older adults play the same roles. They're inflexible, they're grumpy, they need a lot of assistance, what I call a sympathetic senior. They have a cognitive decline. Think about the story of The Notebook, or they need constant around the clock care. I just watched a Super Mario Brother character that needed to be fed at the dinner table and couldn't find the spoon of their family member who was trying to feed them off to the side. We see that. And then also, and I always think about the inflexible, grumpy senior, and I've said this lately, just because the Clint Eastwood character is the grumpy, inflexible senior. He always needs to be shown the light. He always needs to come around to the new era of doing things, the classic cowboy, think of Yellowstone, etc. So, but we know that that's not every older adult. And in media, in news media, I just watched, I mentioned this morning to a colleague that I just watched the, someone show how their grandfather or father at 93 years old was, going up a mountain, and they watched, basically him being supported going up a mountain. Or you hear of the news story of the 80, 90-year-old who's running the marathon or running the Ironman. And so we also think that the only way to be successful at aging is to run marathons, mm-hmm. which seems crazy. And I know, Deborah, you've heard me talk about that I'll never do that. That's not in the cards for me. And so I just think that we must diversify stories. I know your wonderful podcast talks about the many ways in which older adults are living fulfilling, wonderful, purposeful lives, and continue to do so, and continue to give back to their communities, their employers, their families, and social good in general, public good. And so I just think that the stories that we see and consume in media should reflect all of the things that we see in community.
Here's a story that blew my mind, thinking about what you just shared. So I was in my husband's family is from Greece, and we went to Athens and we were visiting some family. We went out to dinner with them, and it was, they were looking at their watch, and I said, "Do you have to go?" And they go, "Yeah, because we have to go pick up flour on the way back home." I said, "Why is that?" And she said, "Well, because our grandmother, she makes bread for everyone in our village, and we've got to get the flour to her, or none of us is going to have bread tomorrow. And I just thought about, and she's like 95, and this is her job, her purpose. If she does not bake the bread every day, everyone doesn't get that beautiful, lovely homemade bread. And it's
Yeah.
not like this is a nice thing to do. This is her job, and people depend on her. And there was such an absence of hearing those kinds of stories back here versus, in these villages in Greece where all generations depend on everybody else. And we need so much of that.
Yes. I think now more than ever before, and I think we have some really scary headlines where, our media are tearing our generations apart, painting boomers as, holding on to their money and their homes, and they're not sharing, and they're not leaving the workplace so other people can come up underneath them. And, really these frightening stories that don't allow for what you said, which is relying on one another, learning from one another, supporting one another. I mean, it sounds like the grandmother could not bake that bread without the flour that was coming from a different generation, right? And she has the time and experience and skill and desire to make bread for her family and her village and her neighbors. And what a beautiful thing. And I'm sure I look forward to hearing the story of like, who's the apprentice underneath her that is going to learn? Because at some point, there will be a time where she probably won't be able to bake that bread, whether she's passed or her mobility changes. And so I'd be really interested into learning what the succession planning of the bread making of that community looks like, because I also think that that's really great. And I was just, as you're mentioning this bread making, and I hope your viewers are watching the many ways in which older adults are being highlighted in social media. The Pasta Grannies Instagram is one of my favorite things and feel good things, where basically younger generations mostly, I think, are putting Instagram reels out there of their grandmothers or grandmothers in their community, or older women in their community making pasta in their like older years, 80s, 90s, 100. And like your grandmother that you mentioned, they do it for everyone, like not just themselves. They're not just making like one thing of pasta for a daytime lunch. They're really doing it for everyone. And what a beautiful thing to do. And I think breaking bread or pasta or any sort of meal together is another great way that we can bring generations together.
Food. Well, as you're talking about that, I just keep thinking that I don't know that I believe in demographics. The whole idea of boomers versus, the world, or Gen Z being something, it feels again like NFL teams, and we just like to bet and have our flags and, and root for one and hate another. But if we abandon those and thought about the way that you approach it, which is here's belly dancing or here's gardening, who's in? And you're going to find preschoolers and teens and 80-year-olds. And it's kind of not going to matter because they're all gardeners. Can we reimagine ourselves that way?
I think that there is an immense amount of opportunity to do that. And I think there has been and COVID didn't help us, right? Of people staying safe from the spread of COVID-19 and staying in their homes and relying more on technology or on, other ways to stay connected. I hope that there are people out there like myself who are welcoming community safely. We always want people to gather together safely. And I think that whether it is programming like that or ways to recreate or opportunities to celebrate, a given, we have the fall holidays coming up, and there's many fall holidays of many cultures and many traditions that bring people together. And I hope that people are finding their ways to connect there. And I also think that if we're intentional, we're connecting in and outside of a community, whether it's, talking to someone at the coffee shop or at a grocery store or at the gas station or in a pew. And not everything needs to always be so formal. I just think that if you go out into your community thinking, you can connect with one person a day, what better communities and stronger communities we will be.
I've taken that to heart. I was reading a story that one of the downsides of grocery stores now having self-checkout is that there isn't a person just to say hello to everyone. And for some seniors, for some of us, it doesn't even matter what age you are. If you're living on your own, that could be one of your human connections of the day. So I'm now that weird person at Albertsons. If I'm walking down the frozen aisle, I'll say hello to everyone. I don't know if it's okay. I don't know if it's weird, but just thinking about that for some folks could be a real human connection. And it's not like we're going to, be best friends for the rest of our lives, but for a moment there is that connection.
Mm-hmm. And I think a reflection of feeling seen. And I think, the psychologist in me says, keep doing what you're doing until someone tells you it's weird or don't do it or whichever. And the professor, the previous professor in me would say, and you have to hear, don't do it. And please stop 3 times before you take it. Just be, an outlier and an anomaly. But until you hear something a couple of times, do you think that that's a pattern? And so I'm with you. I pretty much talk to everyone, which can be a problem when even leaving my office and going to the restroom, because I run into about 10 or 15 members and I want to know about their classes. I want to know about their lives. I want to know how the visit of so-and-so who I knew was coming into town when. I want to know all of it. But I think that it helps foster connection. And I think at a time where we know that social isolation and feelings of depression and anxiety are at all-time highs, I like to think that a little human connection and feeling seen can go a long way.
Mm-hmm. What has changed? What have you changed in your own life as a result of being around the folks that you've met at GenSpace?
I think I'm learning so much from my members and from my team members. But the one thing that I would say is to sometimes just stop the hustle. I think even my members, as they're hustling from one thing to another, or, they miss a fitness class because they were at a doctor's appointment and had to leave early, they still come to the space. They're still here. And they're sitting in the library and chatting with a friend or having, skipping their class and going for a cup of coffee, in our horticultural therapy space. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned. I think the other beautiful part from the leadership side is that it takes a village, that I can't just talk to, and we can't just talk to writers, that we also have to talk to showrunners and producers, and other platforms when strikes allow and when encouraged to do so, when not in quite so much conversation about the future of work in entertainment. But I think that also there's beautiful ways to have conversations and to bring everyone in, because I think the true way to bring systemic change is to have culture change. And so we need everyone on board. And Wallis is the best teacher of this. If you see something wrong, do your darndest, do your best to address it and support, the change you want to see. And for me right now, that's kind of getting everyone in on the current reality for many older adults is not a reality that I am comfortable growing up and growing into. That the current level of senior affordable housing, supportive services, available community centers, and safety and security of older adults, both online fiscally and in community, is just not one that I want to grow up in. And so it's up to the rest of us to kind of figure out how to address changes right now immediately for our older adults, and then hope that we are creating enough change to see our spaces change when we age into them.
So it's wonderful that you are a laboratory, really a learning lab for the rest of us who are thinking about our own lives and ways that we can be more intentional as we're both assisting folks older in our homes and also preparing for ourselves. How can we learn more? Where can we go if we want to extend what you've learned into our own communities?
Sure. So definitely our website has all the information that I've talked about here in terms of our, Wallis's vision and our current programming and the online programming that I described. Our on-demand classes are not just for older adults. I've been known to watch a on-demand stretch class when on the road, and I think it's a wonderful chance to be online and to participate in some movement of the body. We also we try and do a really great job of putting our resources for the leadership initiative on our website, both in, kind of what's going on in the world, in aging in the news, and also available internships and fellowships with GenSpace. And then the work that I talked about in entertainment, we did create some resources for content creators, and that's pretty much anyone in media, anyone who produces something that goes out into the world for people to consume, paid or unpaid. We have some resources about terms we love to hear to describe older adults, and then a little bit more about the myths and tropes that I'd love to combat against. And then lastly, a thing that I just started doing publicly, but has been going on for a long time, is I am publishing just kind of thoughts and reflections each week about a certain topic. Last week was about the Golden Bachelor coming to ABC and making big wave news, and kind of what I'm looking forward to seeing and what I'm a little bit nervous about seeing. So a little there. And then also, this week talking, our wonderful partners at AARP just did a program on emergency disaster preparedness and response, and talked all about resources available for individuals and leaders of community spaces. And so I like to think that those are welcomed resources to everybody else, and hopefully gets people thinking about older adults, maybe your neighbor, parents, you in the future. And I hope those are of good use, and also really looking forward to staying connected. We've had a lot of visitors here at GenSpace. We've had people from all over the world and all over the country come and join us. So if you are, if you run a community space, we've had folks from a public library who are redoing their tech center come and join us and ask us about age-friendly design and disability-friendly design. We've had other senior centers join us and talk about programming. We hope to continue to be a learning lab and a place where people can use as a resource, and to stay connected with people who are doing this great work at any stage and any level.
Well, that's wonderful. We'll have everything there, and I do recommend folks sign up for your newsletter because it's fun and informative.
Thank you so much.
Jen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me, and looking forward to hearing many more fun visitors of your podcast and staying connected. So thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Dareful Project. Please follow, like, and leave a review. It really helps. We're on all your favorite platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Audible, TuneIn, Amazon Music, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. And to connect, you can email me at Deborah@dareful1.com. That's Deborah, DEBRA, at Dareful1, that's with the number 1.com. Thanks for listening.